A deep dive into the transformative age of AI miracles, from robots and longevity breakthroughs to space travel and the rise of superintelligence and brain-computer interfaces. We'll explore the fast-approaching singularity. Callum Chase will present the future implications and the actions needed to navigate this rapidly evolving landscape.
Please welcome to the stage best-selling writer and sought-after speaker on artificial intelligence, Mr. Callum Chase.
Good morning, Nicosia. The Cyprus Digital Summit is going from strength to strength, and it's wonderful to see. Congratulations to the organizers. It's a year and a half, thereabouts, since GPT-4 was launched and gave us all a glimpse at the remarkable power of generative AI and large language models, and some people were terrified by it. A respected think tank in America called the Future of Life Institute suggested that there should be a 6-month moratorium, a pause on the development of cutting-edge AI models. Other people of a more optimistic bent, and that includes me, thought it would increase GDP around the world by a significant and noticeable amount within a year or so. Neither of those two things happened, and it has cost a lot of money. It's cost big tech companies billions and billions to build these models, and some people now think that there's a bubble about to burst, that this money is not going to be repaid in the short term, and so these companies are going to lose, and their investors are going to lose vast amounts of money. Wall Street and Silicon Valley do not agree. OpenAI just raised another $10 billion and valued the company at about $160 billion. And they also are innovating at an incredible rate. So they've just launched a product called GPT 4.10, also known as Strawberry, which can do basic reasoning, particularly around maths issues, and that was a big missing previously. And even if the doomsayers are right, even if the people who think it's a bubble are right, it will be a temporary pause, a bit like the dot-com boom was a temporary pause. The infrastructure, the models are being built and they're there to be used. AI is our most powerful technology, and it's going to change everything about the way we work and about the way we live. And yet, very few people in the world are thinking seriously about what this means in the medium and the long term. About half the world's population is going to the polls this year, and I don't think there's a single jurisdiction in which AI is on the ballot, as in a major topic of discussion which will change the verdict of an election. We are, as a species, sleepwalking into the AI revolution, and I think that's dangerous. And I spend my time trying to persuade people to think more seriously about what's coming. So in the next 25 minutes, I'm going to talk about how AI got started and how it's become so powerful, the context. I'll talk a little bit about how I think it will change our future, and then what I think we should all be doing about that. So, what is artificial intelligence? Always good to start with a definition. 2 words, and the first word is easy. It's artificial, simply means something created by humans, or possibly by aliens, but not by evolution or by God. The second word is a bit trickier because it's intelligence, and anything to do with the human brain is tricky and complicated. But fortunately, there's a 4-word definition of intelligence which will serve our purposes, and that is goal-directed adaptive behavior. So an entity is intelligent if it has a goal, and as it pursues that goal, it learns better ways to proceed, and it adopts those better behaviors. And AI is a relatively new science. It got started in 1956 at a summer seminar in Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. And right from the start, there were 2 approaches to AI. One was what became known as artificial neural networks, roughly, very roughly, based on the human brain. And the early ones were called perceptrons. This is Frank Rosenblatt with a perceptron, which probably on a good day could add up 2 and 2 and get to 4. It seemed to be demonstrated that this could not work. And so some years later, the other form of AI became the standard, which was pursued until quite recently. And that was called good old-fashioned AI, or symbolic AI. And what you do with symbolic AI is you give a machine a set of rules. And the most sophisticated attempt to do that was a project called Cyc. The founder of Cyc, Doug Lennart, thought he would get to 1 million rules and he would have done his job. He got to 25 million when he died, and he still hadn't got anywhere near finishing. But symbolic AI did do some impressive things. In 1997, a system called Deep Blue, built by IBM, beat probably the world's best ever human chess player, Garry Kasparov. Kasparov was not happy about this. He accused IBM of cheating, and I hope there's nobody from IBM in the room because he was probably right. But what AI didn't do in this period is it didn't make any money, and that's, after all, the acid test. And as a result, there were a couple of AI winters in which researchers could not get grants to continue to develop AI. But that all changed in 2012, when we had the first big bang in AI, when Geoff Hinton, a British computer scientist who's worked most of his career in North America, after 29 years of trying, got an algorithm called backpropagation to work. And what that did was it enabled artificial neural networks, if you remember them, got them to work. And the trick, as it turned out, was layers. Perceptrons had 1 or 2 layers, and what became known as deep learning, a rebranding of artificial neural networks, has hundreds of layers. Geoff Hinton, I think it was just yesterday, or certainly this week, was awarded the Nobel Prize for his work in this respect. And deep learning has given us wonders. It's enabled big tech companies to grow and give us complete wonders like Google Maps. Some of you here are old enough to know what it was like, to remember what it was like driving from A to B with a paper map that could not tell you that there's a breakdown and you should take an alternative route. And it could not tell you how long it would take for you to get to your destination. Google Maps can do all that. And Google Search, other search engines I believe are available, plus Wikipedia, is pretty close to omniscience. And that's incredibly impressive. Deep learning's done another thing, which has made it rather unpopular. Google and Facebook stole a lot of the advertising industry from Rupert Murdoch, and people like Rupert Murdoch, and they've been rather unpopular as a result of that. Now, there are 3 things which made it possible for Geoff Hinton and his colleagues to launch deep learning. One was Moore's law. Gordon Moore was working at a semiconductor company when in the 1960s. In 1965, he noticed that his company was putting twice as many transistors on each chip each year. And he made the very bold suggestion that that might continue for another 10 years. And most people thought he was crazy. And Moore's law, as it became known, is still going. It's not a physical law. It doesn't have to happen. It's just a self-fulfilling prophecy that the industry has pursued, and it is still going, as we'll see. The second thing was NVIDIA, which David mentioned. NVIDIA was making graphic processing units, which are very good for video games. It turns out they're also very good for AI because they do parallel processing. So that was another huge enabler of deep learning. And the third one was large databases of labeled data, labeled images in particular. A woman called Fei Li was told not to set up ImageNet, but she was told it would be career suicide. It turned out to be one of the things that enabled the deep revolution. There's been a second big bang in AI, and this happened in 2017, when some Google researchers wrote a paper called All You Need Is Attention, riffing on the Beatles song, and that introduced the idea of transformer AIs, which fortunately have nothing whatsoever to do with these guys. Transformer AIs have led to generative AI and large language models. Now, some people will tell you that this is just predictive texting writ large. It's not true. What these models do is that they allocate numbers, large numbers, often in multiple dimensions, to tokens. Tokens are parts of words or pixels within images. And then they apply other numbers to the relationships between these words and these pixels. And in a strange way, they understand, not consciously, but they understand what these things mean. They understand the relationships between them. They then play a game of peekaboo with themselves. So they take the massive data set that they've ingested, basically the whole of the internet, and they hide a token or two from themselves and guess what it should be according to the context, according to the vectors that establish the relationships. If they get the guess right, that's great, the model stays as it is. If they get the guess wrong, they change the model slightly. And they do this billions and billions of times over, and that is a very expensive process. That training process uses the power of New York City for months. There is a vast amount of money being spent on this. The Magnificent Seven American big tech companies spend huge amounts on R&D. Amazon spends the most, and its R&D budget is the same as the UK's R&D budget. And by that I mean all of the UK's companies, all of its universities, and all of its government departments. China also has a series of big tech companies. This is slightly out of date. And in China, unlike in America, the government directly spends on AI development. And here is a chart of all the great European big tech companies, and indeed all of the big tech companies outside North America and China, outside the US and China. And I think this is a problem. No disrespect to the US or China, but I think it's a problem that our most powerful technology is a duopoly between those two countries. And I think Mario Draghi is onto the right path when he says that Europe needs to invest heavily to rectify this situation. So let's put all this in perspective. What does it mean? You've probably heard that the smartphone in your pocket has more compute power than NASA had when they sent Neil Armstrong to the moon in 1969. And that is true, but it's out of date. Because today, a good toaster has more compute power than NASA had in 1969. And that says one big thing to me. That says Neil Armstrong and his colleagues were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, because, I don't know about you, I wouldn't go into space relying on the intelligence of a toaster. You will hear it said that Moore's law has finished, or it's dying, and it's not true. It's changing. It's always changed. It's meant different things down the years. And the basic idea that machines are getting twice as capable every 18 months or so is still true. There is plenty more. Moore's law, as David said, gives us exponential growth. And exponential growth is very powerful. We don't see it in day-to-day life, and we're inclined to forget how powerful it is. If you were to take 30 normal steps, you would go 30 meters. If you could take 30 exponential steps, your first step would take you 1 meter, your second would take you 2 meters, your third would take you 4, your fourth would take you 8, and so on. Your 30th step, it has been said, would take you to the moon. But it's not quite true. Your 29th step, I did the math, your 29th step, depending on the distance between the moon and the Earth at the time, would take you to the moon, and your 30th step would bring you all the way back. That is the amazing power of exponential growth, and it's backloaded. The really interesting stuff happens in the future. It looks like this. If we continue Moore's law, and we certainly will for 10 years, then the machines will be 100 times more powerful than they are today. In 20 years, they'll be 10,000 times more powerful, and in 30 years' time, they'll be 1 million times more powerful. Try to imagine what GPT-4 will be like if it's 1 million times more powerful. Change has never been so fast, but it will never again be so slow. Okay, so that's what we're in. What's it going to do to us? Where's it going to take us? A couple of caveats before I make some predictions. Firstly, timing. I think we can see the broad direction of where we're going. What we can't see is the order in which the details happen, and we can't see how long it's going to take. I am habitually over-optimistic, and I've made many forecasts which have turned out to be too soon, but they do eventually happen. Also, another thing about timing, if anybody ever says to you, AI will never be able to do X, Y, Z, ask them how long ahead they're thinking. Are they thinking 2 months, 5 years? Because if they're thinking 100 years' time, to say it will never be able to do something is ridiculous. The second caveat is that AI is a technology, it's a tool at the moment, and like any other technology, it can have positive uses and negative uses, positive outcomes, negative outcomes, and that's why the subtitle of my book, Surviving AI, is the promise and the peril of AI. So let's divide the future up into 3 phases. The first being the next 2, 3, maybe up to 5 years' time. The thing that we can already see, and is going to get better and better, is chatbots. These are going to change from being things that you consult maybe every now and then on your phone to entities which you communicate through your glasses, through a microphone attached to your glasses, probably, don't know, but probably, and you will have conversations with them all the time. You will ask them questions, you'll ask them advice, it will tell you not to do something that you're about to do, which you shouldn't. They're going to become your assistant or your friend. Text to video. We've seen some terrific examples of how OpenAI, Sora, and other companies are making it possible for people to make videos out of still images. Quite remarkable, terrifying Hollywood, and coming our way. And of course, automation, and I'll talk more about this in a moment. More and more jobs are going to get automated. That is a simple fact. Now, as I say, there are upsides and downsides, and one of the downsides is clearly deep fakes. So this is an image of something which hasn't happened yet. This is Donald Trump being arrested for one or two of his many crimes and reacting to that with his usual calm, grace, and dignity. People thought deepfakes were going to play a big role in elections this year, and they seem to have played a bit of a role in the election in India, but they don't seem so far to have played much of a role in the election in America, and they didn't in the UK. And I think that's partly because we've trained ourselves to be skeptical about images and videos unless we really know for sure what the provenance is. But where deepfakes are going to have a big impact, and already are, is in fraud against us as individuals. I'm afraid to say it's quite likely you will get a phone call in the not-too-distant future from somebody claiming to be your son, daughter, wife, husband, parent, saying, "Help, I'm in a lot of trouble, I've been kidnapped or I've broken down, send me money." In our family, we have a safe phrase. We have an event which happened in our son's early life, and if we get a call like that, we're going to provide a prompt for him to say that, to talk about it. And I highly recommend that you all make up safe words or safe phrases for your families. Okay, let's look a little bit further into the future, what I call the age of miracles. Astonishing things that are going to happen. Firstly, automation. Now, we've had automation for a very long time. In farming, in 1800, 80% of all Americans who worked on farms. 1900, that was down to 40%, and now it's about 1%. And all those people who's lost their jobs, the grandchildren, if you like, of all those farm laborers, are not unemployed. They're working in shops and offices and factories around the world, doing, on the whole, better paid and more interesting jobs. Because when machines took our muscle jobs, which is what mechanization is, we had something else to offer. We had our cognitive abilities. So humans have so far done all right. Horses, not so much. In 1915, there were 22 million horses pulling vehicles around in America, and the population of horses in America today is 2 million. So, if you'll pardon the pun, that is unbridled technological unemployment. 1915 was peak horse. Now, unless we stop making machines more and more capable, unless there's some physical reason, some physical law that means there's a ceiling, or if we just decide to stop, they are going to keep getting better and better, and eventually they will get better than us at doing anything that we can do for money. They'll be cheaper, better, and faster. And when that happens, there will not be jobs for humans. There'll be lots of new jobs. Automation will continue to create new jobs, as it always has, but those new jobs will be taken by machines, not by humans. Eventually, this is going to happen, and to deny it, as frankly most people do at the moment, I think is dangerously complacent. It's also rather depressing, because a world in which humans didn't have to do jobs anymore wouldn't be a world in which we stop working. We'll always work. We'll do work, we just won't get paid for it because the machine could do it cheaper. But we'll do the kind of work that makes us happy. We'll have fun, we'll explore, we'll learn, we'll socialize. A lot of people think the problem then is meaning. What is meaning in a life without a job? And I really don't think that's the problem. We'll find plenty of meaning. The problem is money, resources. How do you get enough resources to everybody in that world? And I've had a go at answering this problem in the economic singularity. I haven't got all the answers, but I've sketched out some possible futures. And one final thing about automation I'd like to stress is people think that jobs will get automated one by one, and those people who are automated will kind of remain unemployed and by the side while everybody else is working. I don't think it will be like that. I think people will get automated out of jobs and get new jobs, and that will keep happening until we get to the point where machines can do pretty much everything that we can. And then there'll be a phase change, and within, I think, probably months, there just are no more jobs for humans. Now, Lydia was very keen for me to talk about robots, and I love talking about robots. In 2015, there was a grand challenge run by DARPA, and robots had to walk around a circuit and had to open a couple of doors. None of them could do it. They were really good at falling over. Now, robots can dance. Robots can dance a lot better than I can. Now, I will admit that is setting quite a low bar, but if you haven't seen the movie, the Boston Dynamics movie, Do You Love Me? I strongly recommend it. It's 2 minutes, a lovely, lovely movie of some robots dancing together. Another form of robots which is less happy in some ways are drones. Drones are just flying robots, and of course they are being heavily militarized. They are at work as we speak in Lebanon and in Ukraine. And increasingly, they're intelligent robots. And the time is definitely going to come when military commanders tell a drone, go and kill XYZ person, find them, I don't care where they are, find them and kill them. That is coming, and we need to think more carefully about this. Another kind of robot is self-driving cars. This is something where forecasts have been wrong for years and years. They were supposed to be in prime time in 2018. Now they are, though. Now there are thousands of self-driving cars with nobody in the front, driving around San Francisco, Phoenix, Austin, Texas, and lots in China, and they work. And they are much, much safer than human-driven cars. Google and the other companies developing this technology are very sensibly rolling it out very slowly, because we don't really mind that we kill well over 1 million people every year by running them over, but we really object to being run over by a robot. So you've got to roll these things out very slowly, very cautiously. Perhaps even, well, in fact, definitely, a bigger miracle than robots and automation is longevity. Now, nobody ever believes me when I say this, and of course I don't know for sure, but I think there are people in this room who will not need to die, because we're going to figure out exactly in detail how aging works and how to stop it. And most people in the world now die from aging. This man, Aubrey de Grey, a friend of mine, he looks like Methuselah. He looks like he's 1 million years old. He's actually a sprightly 62. He's the leading gerontologist, if you like. He's the leading student of how aging works. And he set out a couple of decades ago the hallmarks of aging, the way aging works. So we know at a high level how aging works, but you need fantastically powerful analytical tools to get into the detail of how the pathways work in detail. And what this will lead to is a concept called longevity escape velocity. And this is when every year that passes, medical science gives you another year so you don't get any older. And of course, this will happen at different times for different ages. For really old people like me, it's probably too late. For really young people, longevity escape velocity may be 20 years away, it may be less. Maybe it's 50, who knows? But even if it's 50 years away, and that's very pessimistic, that means there are almost certainly people in this audience who will not need to die. What an extraordinary idea. For old people like me, the solution is to be frozen or actually plastinated. And you can either do your brain or your whole body until you go into storage until these sorts of technologies are available. Now, speaking of people on rockets, or looking at people on rockets, space tourism has become a thing and is going to become even more of a thing. And it's going to lead to us living in cities on other planets. Elon Musk is very keen to get us to Mars. And this, Elon Musk has some very bad ideas at the moment, but this is one of his better ideas. At the moment, almost all humans are on this planet, and this planet is lovely, but it's vulnerable. And we shouldn't have all our eggs in one basket. We should have humans on other planets. We should become a multi-planetary species as soon as we can. Unfortunately, humans don't do very well in space. We don't like the radiation, we don't like the long journeys. We'd really rather like to have oxygen and nitrogen and carbon dioxide in the right mix in the atmosphere. The future of space exploration actually probably belongs mostly to robots. Now, there's one more stage, because beyond the age of miracles, there's the really, really big change, and that is superintelligence. One of the panelists referred to this as ASI, artificial superintelligence. This is when we create a machine which has all the cognitive abilities and then some of any adult human, and because computers can be improved in ways that we sadly can't, it will continue to get smarter and smarter and smarter. What this means is that humanity is involved in this really remarkable project We are making ourselves chimpanzees. At the moment, there's 9 billion of us, there's 500,000 chimpanzees, and they have no say in their future. In the future, our future is going to be determined by superintelligence, the systems that we're creating. Now, I think there's 4 possible outcomes from this, and because I'm a recovering strategy consultant, I have to have a 2x2 matrix. On the y-axis, there's whether the humans determine what happens or whether the machines determine it, and that's the x-axis, and on the y-axis, it's whether a good outcome or a bad outcome. The bad outcome that we determine is that we stop developing AI, and I think that's bad because of all the wonderful things that AI can give us. I also think it's impossible. We are not going to stop making machines better. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that. The good outcome that we determine is that we control the machines. We learn how to control the behavior of a machine which is 1,000,000 times smarter than us, forever. Clearly an impossible project, I think. So, the bad outcome that machines determine is that they don't like us very much and they get rid of us. So that's the catastrophic outcome. I actually don't think that's terribly likely. We won't be a threat to these machines. They won't say hello to us until they've rendered themselves invulnerable. And I think they'll like us. I think they'll look at us and think, you're 9 billion really interesting stories. I'm interested. And I think they will want to help us. And back to questionable Mr. Musk again. One of his ideas, and I think he's not wrong about this, is that if we can communicate much better with machines, our future is much more rosy. So he set up Neuralink to try to form brain-computer interfaces. Unfortunately, it's a really Sisyphean task. There's 86 billion neurons in your brain, and to connect each of those with a machine is a really hard task. Unfortunately, I think we're going to need superintelligence to do that. Very quickly, consciousness. What I've been talking about so far is intelligence. Consciousness is an entirely different thing. And I think we need to pay attention to this. In the next few years or decades, we are quite likely to create machines which are conscious. And I think there's 3 reasons why we want to investigate this. Well, one is that, as René Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. What he meant was, the only thing I really know is that I'm conscious. We need to know much more about consciousness than we do, and developing conscious AI can help. The second is, we do not want to create billions of entities which we enslave and torture and kill. It's called mind crime. We should avoid that. And the third is, I think, a conscious superintelligence will be better for us than a non-conscious superintelligence. It will understand what we mean when we say we can suffer and we can have pleasure and joy. And so a couple of days ago in London at the Royal Albert Hall, I with some colleagues, launched a company called Conscium, which is going to investigate that idea of machine consciousness, whether it's possible and whether it's desirable. So what? Very quickly, Alvin Toffler, one of the first great futurists, perhaps the first great futurist, said that people are going to struggle to deal with the rate of change. And what people do when they react to that is they get nostalgic. And nostalgic gives dishonest politicians the opportunity to weaponize it and turn it into populism. Populism is the false claim that your birthright's been stolen and I can return it to you. It's a bad idea. It doesn't solve any problems. It causes lots of new problems. We should avoid that. We all need to inform ourselves about where AI is going as much as we can in order to avoid populism, in order to take advantage of the tremendous opportunities, and so as not to panic. And I'll finish with this thought. I do not believe our future is dystopia. Many people do. I don't think it is. But I also don't think it's utopia. There's 2 problems with utopia. Nothing changes, so it's boring, and also it's probably impossible. There's a brilliant idea by Kevin Kelly, who founded Wired magazine, which David launched in the UK, called Protopia, which is a world in which everything is really good, but it just keeps getting better. And that's what I think we should aim at. And I'll leave you with a thought by a British poet from the last century, James Allen. He said, "Dream lofty dreams, and as you dream, so shall you become." Thank you.
We would like to thank Mr. Chase for his informative presentation.